What's happening, everybody? On today's show, we're going to hit on all the big stories going around the SEC, including Hugh Freeze getting hired at Auburn, Lane Kiffin getting a big fat contract extension. We'll preview the SEC championship game between LSU and Georgia. Some news over Kentucky as they make a change on their coaching staff, transfer portal madness, and a couple guys declaring for the NFL draft. Locked on SEC starts right now.
Are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. This episode is brought to you by Sling TV. Don't miss this week's matchup between LSU and Georgia right here on Sling. Sling, the TV you love for a price you'll love. Try it today. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. Without further ado, every week around this time, we catch up with our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast. Marler, the regular season is over. Sad face.
Sucks, man. Yeah, so quickly.
It did. It always does. And again, before we know it, we'll be into the start of talking season. But look, with the transfer portal and the early signing period and all that, there really is constantly something going on to talk about.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see the transfer portal carry over again into the spring. And we're going to have people who lose battles in spring games transferring again. And so there really is a lot of madness to discuss. But let's jump into it. The big news of the week, Marler. We had a head coaching opening in the SEC, and it got filled. Hugh Freeze, head coach of Auburn. When you heard the hiring was official, what'd you think?
Okay, so several things here. And I know that I knew he was polarizing. I didn't realize how polarizing he was. Just full transparency, as somebody that grew up as a Bama fan and knows the stereotypes of how I feel like most Auburn fans can be, which is, winning's not the most important thing. We're a family. There's all these other things that they value and they love to pat themselves on the back about they're like a non-virgin version of him. It's it's a little culty. And they wear it as a badge of honor in terms of how different the university is. There's not a person that is more Auburn than Hugh in the country. He's if Auburn came to life, a little bit somewhat sleazy, but also Southern, probably a Baptist preacher of some sort, or maybe just the gear at the front. And there's something something about him, but also something
is
beneath
the collection plate,
Yeah, something beneath not right. It's not as up as he's trying to portray. But it's it also, here's the bottom line that happened. I'm not the DM is the one that's, to me, marriage infidelity, all that kind of stuff. I'm not here to judge you. Divorce rates are crazy anyway with you, but everyone makes mistakes, all that. He's hired to win football games. He's hired to be a coach. And I was a little, many people were coming at him from the moral standpoint. I think it's I thought he nailed the press conference. I think he's gonna be a great fit.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, if we're just talking on the field, X's and O's, Hugh Freeze is a great college football coach, and I think he's going to have great success there once he starts to build things at Auburn. But again, it's the other part. Stay clean off the field. And it's not like it was right. Look, there was bad stuff. They paid Laramie Tunsil's mom's electric bill. Let's be real.
$800, right?
Come on. That is nothing compared to what other schools have done throughout the past. But the good news is NIL is legal now. So that one's out the window. The infidelity thing, to me, that's more between him and his wife and his family. I know you're supposed to be the face of the school and the leader of men right. and all that. But at the end of the day, you know how many football coaches have infidelity issues with their wives and we don't know about it? That stuff to me was kind of whatever. to me, it was the one, like you said, the DM, dude,
Yeah.
stay out of any kind of investigations of
Just believe
whatever.
I mean, like,
yeah, I mean,
I will say it was good.
No, go ahead. We got a little delay. You go ahead.
Okay, so I was gonna say, like, what's funny for me to watch this because I've made a bunch of friends with like Auburn people, and they've been talking about this thing with Harsin like all year. It's been wildly entertaining. But to watch the ups and downs that they went through in just 7 days of like, we're gonna get Hugh, we're gonna get Lane. We're gonna also raid, Ole Miss's entire roster. Judkins is coming to Auburn, like all this stuff, and then all of a sudden it's Hugh, and it's we always wanted Hugh, and like there's this very weird division between when they were talking about, which was like, you better get on board, all right? Like we got to support this university, and I was like, you guys just fired a guy that you refused, like from day one. And the irony of the like making about someone cheating on their wife to try and get a coach fired, and then hiring somebody that did cheat on their wife like 11 months later is not only like ironic, it's hilarious. And it just Hugh Freeze and Jimmy Rain, those are the two biggest stories of the decade.
And by the way, Auburn has put in their in his contract a social media policy where I think they're saying we're gonna handle his Twitter and stuff. You're not allowed to even access it or something like that. But it'll be interesting to see how this thing happens. And again, like you said, I mean, I think he's gonna hit the ground running. And he made the biggest move he could in terms of recruiting, and that was keeping Cadillac Williams. It feels a little weird, like a little dirty, because I thought, like, look, you could do a lot worse than hiring Cadillac and going and getting him some big name coordinators. It just felt weird seeing him so on board with Hugh, because somewhere deep down the past couple of weeks he's been like, man, I hope I can get this job.
Yeah. No, like, and that part too is kind of weird because like the dream team and like, that people I think Auburn fans thought they were going to put together. It looked like it was very like cordial and amicable today. Like they seem to have gotten along. And like, listen, I think Auburn's a place that you do have to believe and buy into all their shit. Excuse my language, but like all of like the unique things that, the creed and like, well, fought until the end, War Eagle anyways. Like they don't get as upset as most fan bases like after losses. They just, the effort is what they're leaning Auburn, man. Hugh was like just embodied all that. Like I'm not sure if that's really a compliment, but like these two, if they can somehow work together and there's not like butting of heads or like any kind of resentment feeling, if you got passed over for it, they could do some damn recruiting trail.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, obviously there's a connection there with the players with Cadillac and I mean, let's be real. A younger African-American assistant coach that a lot of these players relate to and is closer to their age and way more relatable than, like you said, the 50-year-old white coach who who's coming from Liberty. I mean, I don't know if he'll be as relatable, but no, I mean the X's and O's like on the field. Robbie Ashford, him being so excited about the hire, that right there, like he seemed to get better as the year went along.
Yeah.
I thought he played his ass off as well as he could in the Iron Bowl. It's a tough ask going up against Bama's defense, and he made some plays. I think, I think Auburn can hit the ground running next year. And maybe not as much as what Brian Kelly just did in year one, but I think Auburn can have success in year one.
There's potentially 40 open spots on that roster because of the mass exodus and the just throwing that out there. Like there's still all the concerns they had. I'm not saying this to be negative because like I've said this before. I went to Auburn a couple weeks ago for the first time. It was much more fun there than I did in Tuscaloosa, even as a Bama fan. Like there's some concerns. I remember good media days. We were talking about this with like Lance and a couple guys. They were saying here it's the roster going into next year. That's the concern. Like even this year, there's so many concerns about like the depth and the roster talent like going into this upcoming year. But I've been able to, and like the impact is the thing. I didn't realize that. Like he kind of patted himself on the back for that he's not only is he being able to, but like right off the bat. And like you look at Arkansas State. 15 straight years without a winning record before he got there. He wins 10 games year one. Goes to Ole Miss. They were coming off of, like a stretch where they had, I think it's 6 losing seasons in the previous 8. They only beat Bama twice in like 21 years. They lost to Mississippi State. They were just a bad football team. And I think before he got there, they went 0-8 in conference, or they had one loss or zero. I'm sorry, 1 win or 0 wins in conference play in 4 of those years. Like, awful. He ends up going, winning record in year 1, and then goes 9-10 wins after that and wins the Sugar Bowl. So,
how about this for Auburn next year? They open with UMass. That's 1-0. Then they're at Cal. That's a 50-50 game. Home for Samford. Then they're at A&M. Home for Georgia. Bye week. At LSU. Home for Ole Miss. Home for Mississippi State. At Vandy. At Arkansas. Home for New Mexico State. And then home for Bama. That, when I just look at that schedule, that's a daunting schedule for next year. And so maybe 6-6 would be a good start.
I just,
Freeze.
They keep that same energy for Hugh. I'm trying for everyone outside of Auburn, now that this search is over, is that we don't have to hear about, we were 3-16. We sold out the stadium, dude. I mean, that's the kind of fan base we are. This has been the best job of coaching. Will Herring's video was, anyway.
It was interesting. All right, well, let's talk about the guy who turned down Auburn, reportedly, in Lane Kiffin. We'll get to that in just a second with our buddy Chris Marler from the College Football Uncensored podcast. But first, this episode is presented by our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. You get all the latest odds and trends for every pro and amateur league out there. They got all the football games, obviously all the bowl game or the championship games happening this weekend. Then we're into bowl season. They'll have all the bowl games. They've got college basketball up as well. So we're starting to get in the thick of that with the SEC. They've got it all at betonline.net. They're the fastest and easiest way for you to get your betting fix. Head on over to their website today. You can do so on your mobile device and learn more. It is BetOnline. It is where the game starts. Going along here, Locked On SEC, and Marler, we're going to get to the SEC championship game in just a second, but first, the reports were that Auburn was targeting Lane Kiffin. He was their number one choice. Hugh Freeze was number 2. Sounds like sometime last week Lane was entertaining the idea and then kind of turned it down and decided not to. Today he gets a $9 million a year raise. They add another year onto his contract. I still have talked to Ole Miss fans over the last few days who are very iffy on Lane. I mean, he's going to have to earn the respect back of a lot of those fans who didn't like him flirting with Auburn.
I mean, yeah, like that. That's like, I feel like we just kind of asked, like Jimbo used to do that when he was at Florida State. Like every offseason this would happen. And that's like, that sucks. Like I was talking to one of my buddies, Michael Luger, about this, and he's a student at Ole Miss, and he was like, we're giving you everything you asked for. They like accidentally raised over like $13 million for the NIL just out of panic. Like that wasn't the plan. They were just like, we got to show them what we want. When you put out that much effort, you expect to have some commitment back. Or I tell you what, if you don't get that, if you don't get like a firm, like verbal or like action, you better be winning football games. You can't be up to Arkansas and removed from being the number 11 team in the country and be down 42-6 in the fourth quarter. I don't know how he was able to do this, but he would close out the year, and he somehow seems like the hero going into the offseason, which is just a phenomenal power move from him. And it's so weird to look at Lane, and he's been like, he's obviously grown up a lot. He's not the same person he was but Lane Kiffin used to be like Dabo or like Urban Meyer. Like everyone hated Lane in the SEC, and now he's like untouchable. And it's great to see that he's finally reciprocating like some of the love I feel like he gets from places.
Yeah, and it'll be an interesting offseason. Quick note on Ole Miss, they've got to improve that defense. They are a far cry from the Land Shark defense, and we were tricked a little bit with that weak-ass schedule they played for the first half of the season. But, man, down the stretch, the schedule gets tougher, and they gave up a ton of points and a lot of losses mounted. All right, let's get into it, Marler. The SEC championship game this weekend in Atlanta. It is LSU versus Georgia, and obviously the luster a little bit off of LSU after losing to A&M inexplicably this past weekend. But nonetheless, it is still an SEC title on the line, and this line has been moving. BetOnline, it is up to 17.5 now in favor of the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta. You got an early thought on this one?
It's not going to be a fun game. You know what I didn't know until today? Braden Gall told me this. 2 times in the 30 years they've played this game, it's been within 3 points.
Wow. A lot of blowouts.
Like, not a lot of close games. I don't. 7 have been within a touchdown or less. I that to be the case, just because I think that once Kirby's kind of shown it like last year, and I think he doesn't really show everything he has to throughout the season. Like, he's really good at picture stuff and planning, where they will unveil a lot of wrinkles, even in game 13 this Saturday that they haven't put on tape yet. And so I think he's been a great story. I don't know what the hell happened in College Station. That was tough. But I will say that, like, it doesn't take accomplishments for Brian Kelly in year one. You still get to the SEC championship. And listen, you also can't count them out. Brian Kelly's one of the best coaches in the country. You still have a lot of talent. So if they had been against Ole Miss and Bama, like, when they kind of caught fire for this, like, little, they definitely have a chance. But if they do what they did at Arkansas, like, or God forbid what happened in College Station, it's going to be over by halftime.
Yeah, and that's what I said. If LSU plays like they did against Florida or Alabama this year, they'll have a chance. If Georgia plays like they did at Kentucky 2 weeks ago, if Georgia plays like they did in the first half against Georgia Tech last week, and I get it, like, maybe the schedule just wasn't sexy for the Dogs, and maybe they just lost interest, and maybe they'll be up for this one. Some interesting numbers going into this game, Marler. Kirby Smart's 0-2 in his career against LSU. Granted, those were both Ed Orgeron teams. One of those had Joe Burrow on it. But how about this? This is Kirby's 5th trip to the SEC title game. He's won once. Yeah, that was his 2nd season in 2017.
Against Auburn.
Like, people are saying, like, oh, maybe this doesn't mean much to Georgia because they know they're in the playoff no matter what. No, the hell with that. Kirby needs this. Kirby needs that SEC championship on his resume because, look, for the longest, he was a very good coach but not a great coach. You finally break through and win the national championship last year. You still didn't win the SEC. So, like, I think he's got to add to that resume. Yeah, he's got to add to that resume, and he's got to win this game.
Yeah, it's been kind of amazing to watch. I still think Georgia's the best program in the country. I think he's the best coach in the country, even a Raven right now. But there is something, the fact that, like, they've been in this building in particular, and I don't care what happened against Oregon. They have not fared well in that specific building a lot. And I don't know if that happens this weekend, but it's funny to watch just how quickly the narratives have changed now that Georgia's, like, on top, because it's so easy to see. We didn't want to go to that bowl game. We didn't want to go to I care about that. And it's like, man, I've been in this state and around these fans before that. That's a bold-faced lie. So Saturday should matter. I think I will tell you that if they lose, immediately they'll say it didn't matter.
Let's talk a little bit about the playoff rankings, Marler, because we know kind of how it sits. I mean, if Georgia wins or loses, it feels like they're in the playoff at this point.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about Alabama. I mean, it sets up an interesting situation. If USC loses to Utah on Friday night and TCU loses to Kansas State on Saturday, that's going to open up 2 spots. You would presume Ohio State moves back up because their one loss was just this past weekend in Michigan. But I think that opens the door for Alabama. And there's been some debate with Tennessee fans on, we should be ahead of Alabama and all this. But I just feel like that committee, they're not supposed to worry about this. But I think if they look at it and go, Hendon Hooker's out, and we could put Bryce Young and Will Anderson and Alabama in the playoff, I think they're going to take that into account. First, I want to remind you about our friends over at the Tax Act Texas Bowl. Houston's biggest college football event returns December 28th with the Tax Act Texas Bowl. Do not miss out on your chance to be a part of the passion, the pageantry, and the fun as the college football season draws to a close with the Big 12 taking on the SEC in a primetime showdown at NRG Stadium with conference bragging rights on the line. Tickets go on sale Sunday, December 4th at taxacttexasbowl.com, but you can visit the site today and join the priority wait list now to get your first chance to buy tickets and exclusive discounts. taxacttexasbowl.com. Tailgating, live music, great food and drinks, and the spirit and energy that makes college football so much fun will be on full display for a fantastic night of college football. It's December 28th in prime time at NRG Stadium. TaxActTexasBowl.com for all the details, and go sign up for that priority wait list. That's TaxActTexasBowl.com. All right, roll along here. Locked on SEC. We'll see if we can connect back with our buddy Chris Marler. But let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference. Plenty of news to discuss.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we go to Kentucky as they fired their offensive coordinator, Rich Scangarello, after just one season. At the start of the year, a lot of people thought it could be Kentucky beating out Georgia for the East. Wildcats defense obviously had some bumps in the road throughout the year, but this offense with Will Levis, they struggled at times. Kentucky scored a combined 26 points in 3 losses to the top of the SEC East, Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina, and they scored just 21 in a loss to Vanderbilt. I think that one was the breaking point. And Tuesday morning, the Wildcats fired Scangarello after a disappointing one season in Lexington. Kentucky finished the regular season ranked 107th in total offense, 105th in scoring offense, 109th in rushing offense, and 88th in passing offense. So to say they underutilized Will Levis's talents, say the least. Obviously, they had some issues with the offensive line throughout the year as well, protecting Will Levis. Chris Rodriguez was good once he got going, but a change in Lexington already with Rich Scangarello out. We mentioned it earlier with Marler, but news out of Oxford is Lane Kiffin agreed to a new contract with Ole Miss. A season that had rumors about where's Kiffin going to go and all this. Was he going to take the Auburn job? He's now set for 6 years with a rollover to 7, averaging around $9 million per season. So Lane Kiffin moving on. We've got some more transfer portal news happening as we got some new names in the portal. Missouri has thrown in defensive lineman Travion Ford, announces he is going into the transfer portal. Zach Lovett, their linebacker, he's going into the portal. We already mentioned Dominic Lovett, their wide receiver, going into the portal. And Tyler Macon, backup quarterback, is heading in the transfer portal as well for Missouri. Other guys that have entered the portal: Arkansas defensive back Kari Johnson, defensive end Eric Thomas, tight end Aaron Outley. They join Miles Slusher and Malik Hornsby, who recently entered the portal. Malik Hornsby, the big one, backup quarterback there at Arkansas. And a lot of people are going to be interested in his talents. At Texas A&M wide receiver Chase Lane, he entered announced he's entering the transfer portal. Ole Miss, we talked about it earlier in the week, quarterback Luke Altmaier, and of course Alabama, a couple names in the past few days, and Trey Sanders at running back and defensive back Kyrie Jackson entering the portal. Over at Arkansas, they brought in Jadon Haselwood from the transfer portal from over at Oklahoma, and Haselwood is moving on after one season. He announced on Monday he will be entering the NFL draft. He wrote a note to Arkansas fans, said, "I came here this year. It's turned into one of the best decisions I've ever made. I want to say thank you to my family for their constant support. I look forward to everyone's continued support. It's time for me to open up the next chapter in this story. I'm officially declaring for the 2023 NFL draft. Thank you, and woo pig." So give me some interesting names to keep an eye on, and guys who can declare for the NFL draft from the SEC this year and going to make that leap to the next level. Well, one and done in Fayetteville. Jadon Haselwood is moving on. And there you have it. That is the latest news going on around the conference. And now I think we got our buddy Chris Marler back in here as we start to wrap things up. Marler, welcome back. I know you went into technical hell there.
Yeah, there's some terrible storms over here, so I apologize. But yeah, so what were we talking about?
Real quick, before we lost you, making the case, should Alabama or not, make the college football playoff over Tennessee in a scenario where if USC and TCU both lose, we know Ohio State's sitting right there ahead of Alabama, but I keep thinking if Bryce Young and Will Anderson are there and they're willing to play, if Bama makes the playoff, I think Bama would be an attractive team there. Although some Tennessee fans are saying just because we lost Hendon Hooker, we beat Bama head to head, we should be in.
Yeah, so I think that the truth is somewhere in between. Like now, I think it makes sense that Bama's ahead of Tennessee despite the loss. Like, that doesn't take the loss away or the win away from Tennessee. It's just you're moving towards the end of the season, towards the playoff itself, where like teams are separating themselves and injuries do matter. Trust me, they really matter. I almost had to bite my tongue there, but they really matter, especially in the playoff. So it doesn't diminish anything that Tennessee did. It's the fact that we're now late in the year and you don't look like you did in October, for one. And two, yeah, it was a great win. You won by 3 points, but you just lost to an unranked team by by 4 touchdowns. To compare that, like Bama's lost to one unranked team in their last 113 games, and it was against A&M last year by 3 points in the last play of the game. I just think it really is a moot point either way. Bama does not deserve to be in the playoff. They do not deserve to be in the playoff. I don't think they're good enough to be in the playoff. And if I'm being really honest, even as a Bama fan, I don't want them to make the playoff because I don't want to see them lose to Georgia for a second straight year and have to like hear that and become like, for real. Like, I don't want to see that. Like, and that will happen. So yeah, like I think the other part of it too, though, is people don't want to admit, because this whole Bama bias and the committee's putting in there. I don't know who has a better resume, like top to bottom, like strength of schedule. I understand that like they don't have the best win. They do. The best win was at Texas, and it was 1 point. And I understand that Quinn Ewers is out, but that's their best win. And I don't know what else to say about that. Like I don't think that Bama is going to. I think that Twitter will explode for one, and Georgia fans, Ohio State fans, and a lot of other fan bases will riot. Joel Klatt especially will riot if Bama somehow gets it, but they do not deserve to be in.
Well, and the other thing is too, if we're talking bowl projections, the latest bowl projection is predicting Alabama to go to the Sugar Bowl and play Kansas State. I've heard from some Alabama fans saying, though, that may not be the best scenario, because basically you're projecting if they go to that game, Will Anderson's not going to play, Bryce Young's not going to play as they prepare for the draft. Kansas State, it's going to be their Super Bowl. Like Deuce Vaughn they're going to show up and show out those fans, and they're going to beat Jalen Milroe in Alabama, and they're going to
for sure.
They're going to champion that and say we beat Nick Saban and all this.
It's going to turn into maybe I do want them to make the playoff, because that's a worse narrative. I think that Saban getting beat by, I guess, not Bill Snyder. I don't know who the coach is there now, but yeah, like I just think that I understand like the fatigue of it, and I don't feel like this is a preferential treatment thing. People just don't want to give credit to these wins, like. And they're not dominant. They're not dominant. Like a couple of Georgia fans were saying this the other day. Like, they don't have a single dominant win. Like, yeah, really, no one does, man. Against good teams, it's just y'all. It's just y'all and Michigan did it once. So.
Yeah. No, it really is. It's funny because I was hearing all these people debate, and it's like you go look at the resumes of a lot of these teams. It's like, who's your best win? Like, it feels like nobody's really played anybody. And luckily, Michigan won their biggest game, Ohio State. But we talked about it all year. They had played nobody. So. It kind of is what it is at this point.
Exactly. And the Big Ten, like they had the 79th ranked strength of schedule going into last week, and they jumped up to 39.
Real quick before we let you go, I ran through some of the news. Kentucky fired Rich Scangarello after 1 year. I think that was, you had to. I mean, underutilized Will Levis. Like, Will Levis is going to go be a first-round draft pick, and he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. We're going to look back and go, God, where'd that guy play college? Like, there are people who are going to say that and forget he played at Kentucky and feel like it was wasted. Jadon Haselwood declared for the draft, so he's one and done, 1 year at Arkansas. And then some of the transfer portal names. Dominic Lovett, obviously very surprising at Missouri, but Malik Hornsby at Arkansas, Luke Altmaier at Ole Miss. We're going to see a lot of flip-flopping of quarterbacks in the SEC, it feels like.
Yeah, I know for sure. Like, that is one thing. I can't imagine having to do it if I was a coach, because you just don't get a break now. It's just everything's year round. That being said, it's going to be really interesting. Like, there's people already talking that like Sam Hartman from Wake is going to enter the portal, which I didn't know he had an 18th year of eligibility for one. And then the kid from UNC is because now like there's a lot of things to incentivize a 18 to 19-year-old kid as to why he should leave whatever school he originally went to and go like do all the things that Jermaine Burton didn't do at Bama.
Yeah, if you're Drake May and Georgia or Bama comes calling, why would you not consider it? And it's no offense to the kids that are sitting behind Stetson Bennett and Bryce Young, but if you can go get approved, and look at what Caleb Williams is doing with Lincoln Riley over at USC, they're crushing it. So certainly Look, there's going to be a lot of movement. We're going to have tons of stuff to talk about. The whole college football, the whole SEC is just going to look completely different next year with the transfer portal. It's created a new roster overhaul. He is Chris Marler, College Football Uncensored. Thanks for joining us throughout the season, man.
Of course, man. I had a blast. I really appreciate it. I'll get at you soon.
All right. College Football Uncensored podcast. Go find Marler. Thanks, man.
Thank you, man.
All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Again, our thanks to Chris Marler for joining us. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Now you'll make your second listen. Check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast from the games that matter the most. The biggest stories in sports go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. I'm Chris Gordy. We will talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC. And don't forget, Friday's episode, we'll talk with Danny Cannell. We'll talk some SEC, or rather preview the SEC championship and the other championship weekend games with him right here on Locked On SEC.